Many people know that Christmas is pagan.
You sure about that?
The origins of this popular December holiday are not hidden.
You sure about that?
In fact, when Christmas comes around each year, we usually see magazine articles or internet blogs explaining where these traditions came from. Many people are not confused about that.
You sure about that?
What should I do about Christmas?
Then I have a deal for you. Now, that opening was not my own opening. It was an opening found on YouTube on a channel called Tomorrow's World, and it was 11 months ago that they released that video. Now, I couldn't go through all 22 minutes of that video. Maybe I will at some point. But one of the things that I have noticed over the last few years is a lot of people call Christmas pagan. In fact, I have called a lot of Christmas traditions pagan over the years. And the question really is Christmas actually pagan? Well, instead of tackling that question myself, I wanted to invite an expert on the topic, or what I consider to be an expert, somebody who has been fighting the battle against the paganization of Christmas for years now, or at least against the rewriting of history and calling Christmas pagan for years. And his name is Michael Jones. And we recorded a special session just for you. Merry Christmas and enjoy. All right. Hello, Free Thinking Ministry people. We've got a great opportunity to talk about some interesting things here today. It's Christmas time, so Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Hopefully you are enjoying your pagan holidays, and you are doing all of the rituals and the things that come with that. I got a special guest with us today. Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy is with us, taking some time to actually discuss Christmas and its pagan origins. The reason I wanted to do this was a few reasons, but last year at my church, we did a Christmas Eve service, and a lady came up afterwards, was talking to us, and she goes, I just love all these songs, but Christmas really is actually a pagan holiday. It's like literally right after Christmas Eve service, so I didn't have the heart to get into like a debate like right then, right, Michael? But this is something that people say every year, and you've covered it. How many years have you kind of been, quote unquote, debunking these sorts of things?
Probably since I think 2014, 2015. I remember I first started making Facebook posts about it. So it tells you how long that's been. And when I first started making it, everyone was disputing me. Like, they're like, no, it is pagan. And then the next year, the same thing, but a little less. And then the next year is a little less. And then like the next year is like 50-50. And then now when I make posts on like Twitter or Instagram or even Facebook, most people are on my side. It's just a few dissenters. So we're making progress on this. This is great.
That was the other thing I was going to ask. Are you making progress? Do you feel? I do see a lot more videos popping up, but you were the first one I kind of saw take this on. And full disclosure, like I thought that there were pagan origins to a lot of these things. I did youth ministry for over 10 years, and I actually kind of talked about that with the youth, with the kids a few times. So I was part of the problem, as it were. But you see people, we're going to watch a few videos that are popping up as experts in this area, and you just assume, oh yeah, they're experts, so they must know what they're talking about. And they don't really know what they're talking about.
And to be fair, like I don't have a degree in history or anything like this, but like what I can give you is references to actual experts, and I can give you primary sources from the ancient world. So like a lot of the times they'll bring on someone and they'll set them up as an expert, and they really aren't. I'm not doing that, but I mean, at least I can, like we should listen to their arguments, and you should listen to my arguments and follow the data.
Yeah. One of the things I appreciate about what you do on the TikTok, Instagram, and stuff is you do it in a playful way too. Like you kind of use the sarcasm and do it in a playful way that I think is really eye-catching and helpful. So if you haven't followed Michael Jones on Inspiring Philosophy is your channel. I'm sure a lot of people watching this know who you are, but for those that don't, like people that know who we are but don't know who you are, where can they find you?
You can follow me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, just at Inspiring Philosophy. If you search it, I'll come up, probably be the first hit. But yeah, I'm pretty much all around.
Yep. And are you doing an end of year fundraise? Did I see you're
Yeah,
doing
we're
some
trying to
innovative
fundraise for one thing. We're now working with people to start making videos because I just don't have the time to keep making them and do everything on Instagram, TikTok, as well as make videos. So we're trying to bring on an editor full time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to cut down production, and I don't want to do that. The editor I'm trying to bring on just lost his full time job too. So,
Mm.
it's kind of one of those situations where we're like, it'd be really great if we got the funds. Everyone would win. I would be able to keep making a ton of videos, like I want to. Because right now I'm like working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and I can't sustain that. So I'm going to cut down. But if I can bring the editor on full time, we'll just keep going. So if people can keep donating, that would be so helpful.
All right. So if people on here watch this like this, they want to find a way to support you, they can do that where?
Our website, inspiringphilosophy.org/give.
All right. We'll put that link in the description as well. All right. So let's get into it. Is Christmas a pagan holiday? One of the reasons I think I'm going to share my screen here. This is part of the reason I think this is important. This person, I saw a person that posted, says, why I left Christianity. I left Christianity because I came to find much of what Christianity practices is rooted in paganism and is serving other gods. I had to accept the reality Christianity did not serve the God the scriptures speak of. Have you heard this before? People say stuff like this.
Yeah, it's so, first of all, the statement is so general. What is rooted in paganism?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing theologically in Christianity is rooted in paganism. Are there practices like customs? Well, of course. I mean, just look at like Acts 17. Paul quotes the pagan Stoic philosopher Aratus. Like, okay, so obviously there is something pagan in the Bible that has been reclaimed and used by God. So we would never say Christianity is totally divorced from the cultures that it was when the texts were being written in, just like the Old Testament isn't either. But there's nothing theologically that's pagan. And also with the images that go along with the text, they're insinuating that Christmas customs are pagan. And I can't find any evidence that any of them go back to paganism. There are speculations, but there's no actual evidence.
Yeah, and so that's what we're going to get into. So the first video I want to watch is actually a newscast. I don't know when the newscast was, but this video was only posted 5 days ago. So
by the Great Hebrew Awakening.
Yes, by the Great Hebrew Awakening. I don't know much about the Great Hebrew Awakening.
Oh, I'm sure I can predict what they believe.
Yes, I'm sure I can too. But they post this, so we're gonna watch some of it, and then you just kind of let me know when to stop to address some of the claims. Sound good?
Yep.
90% of Americans celebrate Christmas in one way or another, according to the Pew Research Center. The holiday began in the 4th century when church officials chose to honor the birth of Jesus. But several customs we've come to associate with modern-day Christmas actually evolved from ancient pagan traditions celebrating the winter solstice.
So you can stop it really quickly.
C. Davis is the best.
So before we get to Kenneth C. Davis, Christmas was officially sort of established on December 25th in the 4th century. But we do believe it probably goes back to the 3rd century, going back to writers like Apologetics of Rome doing calculations on when they think Jesus was born, when he was conceived, when he died. The early church had a belief that a prophet should die on the same day they were born. But with Jesus in the Gospels, his conception is important because that's what is announced to Mary. So they thought Jesus would die on the same day he was conceived. They believed Jesus died on March 25th. And like scholars like Thomas Schmidt have written on this, as well as Thomas Taylor. They believed he died on March 25th. If they believed he was conceived on that day, you just count forward 9 months, you get December 25th. So that's why the church most likely came to accept December 25th of that. Now, with regards to the customs, again, no evidence. We can get into specific customs later. Most customs associated with Christmas that we would tend to come from European folk traditions, Christian European traditions from the Middle Ages, this time period, long after paganism really was having the influence that it still had. With regards to the winter solstice, we don't have any evidence of any winter solstice holiday prior to Constantine. So this is what people ought to think. They think that what we have references to a winter solstice festival and other festivals on December 25th after Constantine. you have the calendar of Philocalus, you have Julian, you have Macrobius. They're all talking about all these festivals on December 25th. If there were so many, you'd think we'd have at least one reference prior to Constantine. So that's already should be scratching our head. And also during the time of Constantine, the co-emperor Licinius, there's an inscription that says he worshiped the sun in November. Prior to that, Aurelian established that chariot races should be used to celebrate the sun every 4 years in October. That's in the 200s. In the Fasti inscriptions, you have references to sun worship in August and in early December, but you don't have anything on December 25th. So we've all these references to winter solstice, pagan festivals, and the like on December 25th after Constantine. Prior, none, and we see sun worship on other days. So I argue it's actually more likely that during Constantine, Christianity rose to prominence, and Christians started celebrating on December 25th. Pagans responded by putting solar holidays and other holidays on December 25th to compete with the rise of Christianity. We know in this time period, pagans were mocking Christians. There was a work written called the Historia Augusta, which is a bunch of fictitious letters and works attributed to prior emperors, where they're using to try to, and other people as well, to try to mock Christians. So they're doing this already. So they're doing this in the 4th century. So it wouldn't be surprising if they also decided to try to mock the Christmas celebration or to compete with it by putting a solar holiday on that day. So Ronald Hutton will say that, he's an historian in his book Stations of the Sun, that, they did mark on the Julian calendar the 25th as the winter solstice. That's true. But he says they left it as a quiet period. It was a celestial event. They didn't actually celebrate anything on that day. So just because they set the winter solstice on the 25th, that doesn't mean it was a holiday. Kind of like us today. When December 21st rolls around, we go, winter solstice. Anyway, back to work. I mean, like, no one cares. The Romans kind of were the same, as were the Egyptians and others. They had this festival of Saturnalia, which was on December 17th. It lasted for a couple days, depending on the time period. And then back to work and get ready for the new year, which was on January 1st. So there wasn't a festival on that day as far as we can tell from the data. Now, after Constantine, a bunch of festivals, but probably because they were trying to compete with the rise of Christianity.
And it's usually glossed the other way, right? That Christianity was trying to compete with paganism, and so they inserted Christmas rather than the way around to you.
Yeah, Christians are always the guilty ones. They're always guilty until proven innocent. If anything looks like, it's never the pagans could be the copying. No. That's never the case. It's always the Christians. And it's like, there's even a guy named Glenn Bowersock. Now, I don't agree with his conclusions, but he even argues that after the Nero was persecuting Christians and Christians got more popular, a lot of their works were being spread around pagans, and pagans made works to mimic Christian works. Now, he might be right with someone like Apollonius of Tyana. I don't know about some of his other arguments, but he's making the case that pagans were mimicking Christians after the Neronian persecution.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right, let's hear what Kenneth has to say.
Selling author of the Don't Know Much About series, which we love. Welcome back to the table. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So this is something I've always been fascinated by, because
they've set him up as an expert in history. As far as I can tell, his expertise is in American history. Now, that doesn't mean anything he's wrong. Again, I don't have any degrees in this area as well, but they set him up as that we should just take his word for it because he's an expert on this. He really isn't. He's talking outside of his specialty. Again, doesn't mean he's wrong. Doesn't mean he's not allowed to. Let's hear what he has to say, but let's not just take what he says as if it's dogma.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think some people see anybody that has a specialty in one area of history and assume that history is this monolithic discipline, that if you have a specialty in American history, well, you must know a lot about the Crusades and stuff too, because you're a history person.
And also the other way goes around. Like, I've seen Kenneth Kitchen, who's an Egyptologist, correct biblical scholars on things, or be right about things biblical scholars aren't right about. I mean, like, let's go on what the evidence and the arguments are. Let's not just go on authorities.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the Bible never talks about the date of Christ's birth, yet we celebrate December 25th. Why?
Well, primarily because in ancient Rome, there was a feast called Saturnalia that celebrated the solstice. What is the solstice? It's
All
the
right, stop,
day
stop,
that the
stop,
sun
stop,
starts.
stop, stop. Okay, right then and there, this is proof. This is the proof. I'm using it in a colloquial sense. This is proof he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, he said Saturnalia was a solar festival. It wasn't. Saturnalia honored the god Saturn. That's why he's an agricultural deity. And it was always on December 17th. Now, depending on the time, it could last for like a day, 3 days, up to a week, but it was never on the 25th. So right then and there, he is wildly wrong.
So it's and it's not well, let's just keep going. Because this is there's some other clips too that bring up Saturnalia. I think the two biggest things are Yule and Saturnalia.
Yeah.
Let's see what else he has to say.
It's coming back. The days start getting longer. And most of the traditions that we have that relate to Christmas relate to the solstice, which was celebrated in ancient Rome on December 25th. So when Christianity became the official religion, in a sense, in Rome, they were able to fix this date, which some scholars say may be earlier than that. There's a little discrepancy about it, but there's no question that the fact that it was celebrated in Rome as an important day with gift giving, candle lighting, and singing and decorating houses really cemented Christmas as December 25th.
You always say you don't know much according to your books.
So again, pause it there. So again, he assumed Saturnalia was on December 25th. It wasn't. He's wrong. And yeah, there was gift giving on Saturnalia. There was candles and celebrations because it was a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Like gift giving is in the Odyssey. It's in the Iliad. Like this is just a general human custom that people have done. You just can't be like, look, gift giving on a holiday. Therefore that like were the Christians sitting around going, gee, how do we celebrate holidays? Let's see what the pagans do because we have no ideas. Like maybe the gift giving on Christmas came from, I don't know, the story of the Magi bringing Jesus gifts. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. It's that's as believers, even as you grow up, even if you don't know anything about the pagan rituals, one of the reasons you give gifts to your kids when you explain Christmas is to say, because Jesus gave the greatest gift to us, salvation, and the Magi gave gifts to him. So obviously we can create customs around that. We don't have to base it on whatever a different culture was doing at a different time. Even if it's relatively close to the timetable. Now he kind of hedged a little bit, right? So he said, well, so there's some dispute about when Saturnalia was, but you're saying there's not really a dispute about.
There's no dispute. Saturnalia always began on December 17th. The dispute is about how long it lasted. Like Macrobius says 3 days, but some earlier inscriptions say it lasted for a week. Okay, so 17, 18, 19, 20, 21st, 22nd, 23rd. That's 7 days. So the longest it would probably last to the 23rd.
Yeah.
But do you know why we have a Christmas tree as opposed to a bunch of hydrangeas?
Well,
are really pretty.
This is another
Puffy and pretty.
This is another.
How about that, Ken?
This is another pagan tradition. So Christmas is really about bringing out your inner pagan. The Christmas tree really comes to.
Who knew we had an inner pagan?
Yeah. Which of the wise men said that? I can't remember.
Well, it's like Halloween and a lot of other things we do. These all predate Christianity. But in the Norse world,
should we cover Halloween too? Since he brought.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, there's no evidence decorating a Christmas tree goes back to paganism. We can get to that in a bit. But no, Halloween is not pagan. Halloween is just the eve of All Saints' Day. It did not predate Christianity. Christians came up with it. What they'll try to say is that it was like a reworking of the Celtic holiday Samhain. But if you go to Celtic regions, All Saints' Day was originally on April 20th. And Ronald Hutton says this makes nonsense of the notion that they chose that date because of Celtic influence. Because in Celtic regions, All Saints' Day was on April 20th. What actually happened was in Germanic and English regions, they were celebrating All Saints' Day on November 1st. They started that tradition, and then it migrated to Celtic regions. And Samhain just happened to be around the same time. So, coincidence, not pagan borrowing.
Yes. Correlation, not always causation, right? Is that kind of how it goes?
Right.
Yeah.
Germany, the Scandinavian countries, where winter was really serious and the solstice was really an important idea. They celebrated the return of life by celebrating an evergreen tree. When Christianity came in, they started to use the evergreen tree, the pagan symbol, as a symbol of the tree of paradise. And they started to hang an apple on it.
So there's a lot of problems here. There's some truth mixed in with that, though. So in Scandinavian regions, as far as we can tell, the oak was sacred. That was the sacred tree of Odin. There may have been, so Adam of Brenham talks about a sacred tree that they were sacrificing under people. Keep that in mind. It may have been a type of fir tree, like maybe I remember reading that some thought it was a yew tree. So that's a type of like evergreen tree, but it looks more strong and sturdy. Like you wouldn't look at it and go, mistake it for a pine. So that may have been that. But as far as we can tell, what was sacred to them was the oak. The oak is far more sacred to northern pagans like Scandinavians and the Gauls and that relative people. No evidence that a pine was really sacred. The closest you get is like the Attis cult thought the pine was sacred, but that's in Greece. No connection to the origin of the Christmas tree. He's right that it was. He talks about it being a paradise tree, which is there is truth in that because most historians think that the origin of the Christmas tree is connected to what we would call a paradise tree, because in the Middle Ages, saints have feast days, and they still do. The feast day of Adam and Eve is December 24th. In the Middle Ages, they would celebrate that with an Adam and Eve play. Now, if you're in Germany in the Middle Ages, not a lot of trees available for your play. So they'd get an evergreen tree, they decorate it with apples, and they'd put on an Adam and Eve play. What do you do on Christmas Eve? Well, it's cold. There's a bunch of apples. You probably gather around and eat the apples off the paradise tree. And so we think that probably just the tradition just sort of became associated with Christmas Eve and then Christmas, because you're setting it up on Christmas Eve anyway. And that's the earliest ornaments are apples.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could even see like the balls that you hang from the trees. They kind of they would resemble apples. That would make sense.
Yeah. Custom in the Middle Ages, and so that's what we think the origin is. So that seemed to have come about. There's a great channel called Religion for Breakfast, and he did a video on this last year. He found some sources not even published in English. I originally thought the earliest source mentioned was in the 1500s for this. He found some in the 1400s. So there is this custom of people in Alsace, France, putting up these trees on Christmas, and some preachers are condemning it, but no one says it's from paganism. Like no one says this is an ancient pagan custom. So we're not really sure of the origin of the Christmas tree. We know where it started, roughly around the time it started. We have a likely origin, but we can't be totally sure. So no evidence it goes back to paganism.
And wouldn't you think that if there was clear evidence in history that it was connected to paganism, you would have more objections from people who are spiritual leaders in the church? And if Christians are engaging in obvious pagan practices, wouldn't we have probably more evidence of priests, preachers saying, "Don't do this. This is pagan."
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I think there is a preacher that was upset by the Christmas tree, but he says, like, I don't even know where this thing came from. So, you do have some of that, but none of them are saying don't do it because it's pagan. Like we don't have any sources. So could it go back to paganism? It's possible. We don't have any data to show that it does. It's like people will bring up the pine tree of the Attis cult. Okay, well, there are hundreds of years of a gap there. Okay, you got to show some sort of causal link. You just can't do correlation.
Yeah.
So little red balls on green trees.
Oh, that's the ornaments.
Here.
That's where the idea for ornaments.
So all of these things really celebrate the idea that light and life are coming back into the world, which is essentially what Christmas means to Christians across the world.
Right. And mistletoe?
Mistletoe, we can thank the Druids for that. The Druids believed that mistletoe was an all-powerful healing item. It hung from the sacred oak. In fact, if you met somebody in the forest, you gave them the sign of peace under the mistletoe.
Okay.
So people started to hang mistletoe.
So again, truth mixed in with lies here. So notice he mentioned the oak there.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So there, because I said the oak was what was sacred. It wasn't the pine tree. Now this comes from a Roman writer, I believe, Pliny the Elder. he talks about the Gauls in France. If they found mistletoe on an oak, it was considered sacred, and they thought it could cure poison and animal fecundity. So if there was like an infertile animal, you give them the mistletoe found on an oak, it would cure it. It could cure poison too. It didn't cure all ailments, according to Pliny, just those two things. This is in his book, Natural Histories. So now that's only the Gauls in France. And the actual act of hanging mistletoe, again, if you read the Dictionary of English Folklore, we see churches start using it as a decoration in like the 1600s, for example. Robert Herrick's poetry collection mentions it. The tradition of kissing under the mistletoe doesn't come about until, I believe, the servant class of the late 1700s. And it probably was just a de novo custom. Like they just came up with it. Like someone probably saw a mistletoe hanging as a decoration, kissed under it, and it just became a tradition that sprung up. No evidence this goes back to paganism. The truth is that in winter, there's not a lot of stuff that had color to decorations. Mistletoe is growing. They probably use it as a decoration. They didn't have to go back to paganism. But again, the custom also was about it being on an oak, and it was not connected to any time of the year. So if they found it on an oak in February or March, it was sacred. There was nothing associated with December or the winter solstice.
And just, like you said, just because something's growing during that time and it looks a certain color, you could create all sorts of traditions around that without having it to be a worship sort of thing.
Yeah.
Above their doorways as a symbol of peace. This was such a powerful symbol of paganism that English churches actually banned the use of it. And in fact, the real war on Christmas in America begins with the Puritans in around 1659. They knew all of these things, the date, the traditions were pagan ideas. The Puritans banned Christmas for about 20 years in America before the celebration became just too popular.
You'll be glad to know all of your answers today were correct.
Okay, yeah, the Puritans did think Christmas was pagan, but not because they actually had evidence it was, is because they thought it was too Catholic, and they thought the Catholics were pagan. Like, this was their argument. Like, those Catholics, they do all these pagan stuff. They also celebrate Christmas. It's also pagan. Like, so if you're going to think the Catholics are pagan, I mean, unless you, like, obviously, I think this guy disagrees the Catholics are pagan. Why are you bringing up the Puritans then? Their connection to it being paganism was because it came through the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I think that's the end of that one. But you can see how pieces of history, pieces, and you can piece them together and be wrong, right? So, hey, there's some smatterings of this, and a lot of times with history, if you're getting poor history, it's because you're reading these books that make statements and you don't go back to like original sources. It happens all the time. Some people get caught, some don't. Like the 1619 Project got caught because it was so overt. But that happens all the time. So you can't just pick up a history book and assume that they're right on all the facts.
Yeah, I mean, like he said, like when like Rome established Christianity as the official religion, like that's also a myth. Like because people think Constantine did that, and he never actually did that. So he just made it a legal religion. So I mean, like. He just seems to be repeating a lot of mythology that just doesn't go back to facts. Again, there is some truth mixed in with that, but you got to like go through it and figure out what's actually true and what isn't.
Yeah. So the next video I have here is a TikTok from this lady.
Oh, well, everything on TikTok must be true.
Yes. And this says the Christmas tree used to be so evil, the church banned them. This is about a 2-minute video. She's going to set, it's interesting because a lot of times when I come across these videos, it's people that really need to set themselves up as experts. They like introduce themselves by their degrees. I'm a scholar of this, or I got a degree in this. So that's how she introduces it. So let's just do the same thing. I'll hit play here and we'll see what she has to say.
Did you know that the church actually forbid Christmas trees at one time a day? Hi, I'm Annie, and I have a Bachelor's of Science in Bible from a Christian college in Kansas. This is part of my series where I'm telling you things that we celebrate at Christmas that actually have nothing to do with Jesus or Jesus Christ or Christmas. They're actually Yule and pagan, like the Christmas tree. As always, the point of this series is to educate and inform and hopefully bring people closer together. I'm hoping that Christians and people of pagan or non-beliefs or whatever belief you have can all just get along because we all do the same things at Christmas anyway, right? So now let's take a really close look at the history of the Christmas tree. pause to read. My little angel's trying to pop up. So as you can see, it was actually part of Yule worship. Evergreen trees were a symbol of continual life, especially the time of the winter solstice. And they were even decorated with trinkets that symbolized their wishes for the new year. And since they were
Okay, this is all false. I mean, she's just absolutely wrong. Listen, the Scandinavian pagans didn't write a lot. Most of what we have on them comes from later Christian converts who wanted to like write down their history. People like Snorri Sturluson, who's an Icelandic chronicler. He tells us most of what we know about Yule. And one of the things he tells us is that King Hakon, who had converted to Christianity, moved Yule to the 25th to coincide with Christmas. Okay, that means Yule was not on December 25th prior to that. Again, it's the pagans trying to copy Christians here. We don't hear anything with evergreens ever associated with Yule. Okay, there's feasting, there's libations, there's sacrifices, there's drinking. There's no pine trees. Again, there's no evidence that custom goes back to Yule. So I don't know what her source is, but this is just wrong. And again, you read Snorri Sturluson, like read some of the early sources that talk about Yule. I think there's a guy called Theitmar. I think that's his name, Theitmar the Chronicler. Let me check that really quick more.
Okay, I did notice on her source. I don't know. I was trying to look to see where her source was, but I couldn't find it, any link to it. But I did notice it said back in the 1840s, which is not all that long ago, by the way. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there was another guy. I think his name was Theitmar. He observed the Danes sacrificing to Odin in January. So maybe that was around when Yule was. I mean, but you know, like we're not entirely sure. I think the date of Yule probably moved year to year because they had a solar lunar calendar in those regions. And so just like the Jews, festivals move from time to time. This is what I also think was going on with Samhain. Samhain was probably on a different day every year. It was not always on November 1st.
Yeah, that's good. For people watching this, explain the difference between the two calendars there. So we've had this question before. Why does the Passover move but Easter doesn't move? That sort of thing. So when you bring up the difference in calendars, why does that make a difference on what day it is?
Because you're calculating festivals according to the cycles of the moon. So, and the moon is different every year. So when you see a full moon, that's a marker, right? You can calculate things, and that's different year to year. So this is why Passover moves. This is also why Easter moves, because the Christians at the Council of Nicaea said that Easter will be on the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox. So the spring equinox comes, look for the first full moon. The moment you see it, you know Easter will be on that Sunday.
Yeah. So it's so that's why the Eastern Orthodox celebrate Easter on a different day than the Protestants, Catholics.
Correct. Yeah. There's different calculations different calendars going on.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not hearing anything. I think you need to play the video.
Oh.
I think you forgot to put it on screen.
Oh, I did. My bad. Here we go.
And so of Yule worship. Evergreen trees were a symbol of continual life, especially the time of the winter solstice. And they were even decorated with trinkets that symbolized their wishes for the new year. And since they were part of the Yule tradition, they were banned in Christian homes. You were basically you're told you were a bad Christian if you had a Christmas or Yule tree. Actually, they're called Yule trees. And so they created their first Christmas tree thanks to Queen Victoria and her family in 1848. This picture says 1850. Side note, their tree is so little. Isn't that precious? I love it. I really do.
You can pause it. Protestants did sometimes ban Christmas customs because they thought it was too Catholic. I'm not sure about exactly when and how long it happened. Like the Puritans, for example, I know that. But and this was never called a Yule tree. There's no evidence of that at all. So if she's right, show me a source from the Middle Ages calling this a Yule tree. I can't find anything.
Good.
See, what happened was Queen Victoria had visited Germany. and she saw their traditions of Yule trees and bringing in the trees into your home and decorating it and making them beautiful. And she wanted to do that in her home. So she did what a queen can do and said, it is no longer a sin to do this. It is no longer bad Christianity to have a Yule tree in your house. Thank you, Queen Victoria. The really cool thing about symbols at holidays is that you can really make anything symbolize anything as long as you believe it to be that true. That's really honestly how it all comes down to it.
That's pretty much the subject of your video. You just want it to be pagan, so you're making it pagan. And yeah, Queen Victoria did visit Germany. Her husband, Prince Albert, was German. That's why he brought the Christmas tree custom over. It was really a German custom, as I said. It started in Alsace, France, which was a German region.
Yeah. So it seems to me and I'm not denigrating her at all. She seems like a nice lady. But it's like, what's it? The Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, just a little bit. And then, so you think, oh, I'm an expert on this. And then you've only read a few things that don't even go back to primary sources, and just basically it's a mythology of what happened in history. And we have to watch for that. One of the things, so I'm probably more apt to know American history than anything. But one of the things that I get frustrated with is the Three-Fifths Compromise, how people talk about that in our history, because they just get it wrong. And it's been mythologized over time of what it actually was intended to do and what it was.
How much do you know about Civil War history?
That used to be the place where I dabbled the most with Civil War history.
Okay. I need to talk to you when we're off camera. I have a project I'm working on.
All right. Sounds good. So anyway, that can happen where you hear things about history and you read an article that was about history, and then you say, oh, I think I'm an expert on this because I read this New York Times article or this project that was been worked on. I have a question here. So there is this statement that I've heard people say where Christians, because the Christmas tree was pagan, would start to do upside down Christmas trees to mark the fact that they were Christians. Have you heard that? Have you heard this before?
No, I've not heard that, but that's ridiculous. I cannot find that in any primary sources. Yeah.
So there's this, and I don't remember where I heard it from, just some random person, I think. So I don't know where they're getting it from. But this idea that, you can look them up, upside down Christmas trees and what they symbolize, that sort of thing. So, so all those things swirl around, right? All right. So the last video that I want to look at is actually from, it's a TV show. It's kind of a woke-ish TV show. That's meant for kids. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'll have to. Have you seen these characters before?
Yeah, I've seen this. Yeah, it's typical of the modern era. Old people dumb, young people smart.
Yes.
And it's just pushing this nonsense that old people don't know what they're talking about. All the knowledge is with young people. This is a Jacobin idea.
Yeah, so I'm going to play this one. It's probably going to say pretty much the same stuff we've already talked about, but it says it in such a condescending tone, which is why I kind of want to play it, because this is how people will talk about it to other people. How do we respond when people are talking about this in a condescending tone to Christians? Because what happens, I think, to that lady that came up after our Christmas Eve service is she probably got in a conversation with somebody who either watched this show or watched that CBS morning news hit show about Christmas, and they informed her in a condescending way, and she didn't want to seem like a bad Christian, so she just said, "Oh, it must be true, and I don't want to look pagan, so I'm just gonna ingest this belief so that I can be a better Christian." And it probably wasn't even a Christian that was telling her these things. So here is a clip of this TV show.
Actually, Granddad, Christmas is a pagan holiday. And Jesus probably hates you for celebrating it.
There ain't gonna be no Scrooges in this house, boy.
Look, Granddad, it's clear from
Jesus is gonna hate you for celebrating it. Okay. I will remind people that Paul quotes a pagan poet, Herodotus, in the book of Acts. So pagan poetry is part of scripture. Okay. Jesus doesn't hate pagan things. He hates immoral pagan things like child sacrifice, worshiping idols. Okay. If a pagan decorated a pine tree, Jesus isn't going to hate that. This is such a fundamentalist talking point.
Yeah. And it also goes into the idea that Jesus hates you because of things that you're doing, right? And so you need to appease. Jesus is this wrathful, vengeful God that you need to. That's actually a pagan idea. that Jesus is this wrathful, vengeful God that you need to appease by not worshiping or not participating in the wrong customs. Right. Like even if you're participating in a non-Christian custom, for instance, like going to a football game, non-Christian custom. Some people would say that's worshipful for some people. That's not something God's hating you for. God loved you so much that he sent his only son, right? It's not about hate. So right off the bat, this is manipulation.
Yeah.
Right here. Jesus probably hates you for it.
In the scripture that Jesus was not born in winter. The shepherds who saw the angels announcing his birth would not have been out in their fields in December. The Palestinian winters are too cold.
So
if you believe in that.
Okay, first of all, I live in Tucson. Okay, it's a similar, it's not exactly, but it's a similar climate to Palestine. I can walk outside in winter in a sweater, jeans. Like I don't need a big heavy coat and hat and gloves like you guys need up north. It's so they're assuming a lot of things that are just not necessarily the case. We've had very, very mild winters here in Tucson, where it's just really warm. Like they're making assumptions that they cannot justify. Yeah, winters get cold everywhere, but in comparison, the Palestinian winters are far, far easy to survive. And again, a lot of people just sleep outside at night in the ancient world because your body wants to be colder so it can go to sleep. So if you got a nice cloak, you got a nice I don't know what am I thinking, like tunic that keep you warm, you'll probably be fine. And you're sleeping with the sheep. A lot of shepherds would sleep with the sheep for warmth. So they still do today. Like I saw a clip of some guy sleeping on a sheep. Like
well, we kind of do that too. We just take the wool off and put it in pillows.
Right.
So it makes sense. I think the best argument I've heard from this is like the idea that the reason the reason Jesus can be laid in the manger is and they are in there's no room for them in the inn, so they're not in some sort of, they're probably in a cave. It's not like some sort of little what would you call it, barn or something. They're probably in a cave where you would keep animals. That's probably where it is. Have you ever been to Israel?
No.
Maybe someday when Israel can guarantee that they're a little bit safer, you can go. But
I think now would be the safest time to go. There's the military everywhere. What are you talking about? This is the safest time to go.
That's true. I was able to go and visit Bethlehem, and it's interesting because they have a church built on top of where they think Jesus was born. That's what Orthodox Christians do. They build churches on top of things. And it's kind of weird because people go in and like kiss the place where the manger supposedly is, but it is a cave. It's like a underground cave where they would keep animals for the night so that they could keep them safe, from predators and stuff like that. So the idea is they would have only been there if it was during the summer because the animals can stay outside in the summer. You have to bring the animals inside in the winter. But I don't know how much evidence there actually is to that, or if it's just our Western sensibility saying winter is cold. So
yeah, sort of thing. The truth is, Christmas evolved from the Roman holiday Saturnalia, a winter festival where men gave gifts to each other. They also would get drunk, have sex with each other, and beat their wives. People would act so crazy on Christmas, the holiday was outlawed by the Protestant Church until the 1800s.
Okay. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on in Saturnalia, for sure. Okay. But I mean, like, again, wrong date. if Christians wanted to co-opt Saturnalia, they would have put Christmas on December 25th. Like, and I wouldn't even blame them if they did. Like, look at like there was a lot of these horrible things going on during Saturnalia. I think would be really good for the Christians to be like, actually, you should be going to church. Stop engaging in drunken orgies and, getting in fights. Like, that would have been a good thing. So, but no, it was on December 25th because they cared about their own calculations. They did not care what the pagans were doing necessarily.
Yeah, and like you said, even if it somehow coincided with Saturnalia, why did the other inappropriate customs from Saturnalia not follow? Why is it just the gift giving?
You could always make the argument that they were like they left it out because of obvious reasons.
Well,
like, we're not going to engage in them. I mean, like, so, but I mean, like, again, evidence just isn't there.
Matter of fact, the United States Congress actually granddad.
Oh, that's the end of that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same myths every year. Saturnalia this, Saturnalia that. They do the same thing on Valentine's Day. Lupercalia was on February 15th. Therefore, Valentine's Day is descended from it. No, that's not how this works. Like, given the amount of holidays that pagans had, because again, you had Roman pagans, Greek pagans, Egyptian pagans, Mesopotamian pagans, North African pagans, Scandinavian pagans. And all those pagans had a bunch of different gods, and they had a bunch of different holidays to honor those gods. At some point, regardless of where Christians place their important days, it's going to be closer overlap a pagan festival. That's just the way it's going to work. That doesn't mean it's pagan. This correlation is not causation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So what would you tell to just somebody who came to this video thinking, oh, I really thought that Christmas was pagan, and I've had people telling me this my whole life. How as Christians should we respond when people are bringing this up to us? Let's first start if a non-Christian brings this up to us, and then we can go to if another Christian believer, because I do think you might respond differently in those situations.
So start with the non-believer, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is like, okay, first of all, why do you care so much? Because this doesn't affect you at all. Like, just look at the history. Okay. If you can show me the paper trail. If Christmas trees go back to paganism, show me. If Yule logs go back to paganism, show me. I can't. The first person to mention any log being burned on Christmas is Robert Herrick in his poetry collection of the 1600s. And he called it a Christmas log. It's not until John Aubrey, a couple decades later, calls it a Yule log. And Yule in English just meant a midwinter period. You're burning a log, a winter log, basically. So when the word Yule moved from Norse into English, it no longer meant this specific holiday. It meant just a midwinter period. So they called it a log, a Yule log. Okay, correlation isn't causation. If the Yule log goes back to paganism, show me the paper trail. If the Christmas tree goes back to paganism, show me the paper trail. If the date was selected because of paganism, show me the paper trail. Show me a pagan holiday on December 25th prior to Constantine. Okay, don't show me, this was the day of the winter solstice. We know. Was there a holiday on that day? No. Okay, why are all the pagan holidays on December 25th after Constantine? Okay, why would we have so many holidays worshiping the sun on different days prior to Constantine and during his time? Like, show me the actual evidence here. And again, I'm not saying Christmas is definitely not pagan. I'm just saying there's no evidence of it. So I want to see the actual evidence, and there isn't. What I'd say to a Christian is like, okay, well, first of all, it isn't pagan, so don't worry about it. Why are you trying to insist that it is? And probably the same thing, I'd say. Just show me the paper trail.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I've said to believers, because I feel like we give the dark forces of the spiritual world way too much credit in our Christian lives. So people do the same thing where they go, hey, don't read Harry Potter because you're going to dabble in witchcraft and you might let evil spirits into your life and that sort of thing. And I say, well, my question is, do you have the Holy Spirit? Like, are you a believer? Do you have the Holy Spirit? If that's the case, now you should be discerning. You shouldn't just participate in everything, because there are things that can distract you and can make that can be sinful and you shouldn't do. But we shouldn't be so afraid of the demonic realm we have a greater power on our side. We shouldn't be so scared of it. And I think people go, well, if I have a Christmas tree, am I letting demonic spirits into my home? Well, if demonic spirits want to get in your home, do you believe that the Holy Spirit resides inside you and you can call in the name of the Lord Jesus? Like, to me, that's part of it too, is even if, like you said, there's no evidence for it, but even if the worst could be true, at best, I could take you to Romans 14 and say, okay, well, this could be a Christmas tree, could be a Romans 14 issue then. Like,
right.
Participating in a custom. Maybe it did have some roots in paganism. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be the case. But do you really believe that you're letting spiritual demons into your house that are oppressing your children because you have a Christmas tree? And if that's the case, what is your belief in the Holy Spirit? So what do you think of that? Like, that's one of the things I kind of say pastorally to some people.
Yeah, and again, if we're going to cut out everything paganism, then you better take an X-Acto knife to your Bible. Start cutting out places like Acts 17.
Yeah.
Or, like Isaiah, for example. I think Isaiah 10 refers to the ball cycle, for example. I mean, like, there are pagan elements in the Bible. None of it affects theology, but it's sort of like, oh, you pagans say Baal is the rider of the clouds. Actually, we're going to say Yahweh is the rider of the clouds. There's like that competition stuff going on in there. That's not evil. That's just the culture of the time. So, people need to start thinking more about this and assume God did not like completely create Israel de novo. He took Abraham out of a pagan world, changed him. He took Israel out of pagan Egypt and called them to be better. Like, he took people that were pagan and tried to make them better. Like, he can do the same thing with decorating a pine tree if that's the actual origin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one could argue even that the beginning of Genesis, the creation story, is rooted in combating ancient paganism. The creation event of ancient Babylon and things of that nature. And then when God says, well, the stars will be as signs and as markers for days and years, that's God saying, yeah, there are going to be natural things that happen to let you know the calendar is moving in a certain direction. And you might even celebrate sometimes those things. That's not means you're worshiping them. But it originates from me, not from some pagan deity. So, yeah. Well, thank you for your time today, Michael. Appreciate it. Hopefully this has disabused people of the notion that Christmas is definitely a pagan holiday or there are pagan things. Is there anything about Christmas and paganism that we didn't get to that we want to cover that people tend to claim?
I mean, there's always more to cover, but I mean, like, I think we've hit the basics.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it. Once again, people can find you on Inspiring Philosophy on YouTube. What's the website again?
Inspiringphilosophy.org.
I never want to say .com just in case. Inspiringphilosophy.org. And yeah, if you like what we do at FreeThinking Ministries, if you want to find another place to support, Inspiring Philosophy is a great place. In fact, speaking of paganism, you should go to Inspiring Philosophy and look at some recent conversations around someone named Billy Carson that just dropped a few days ago, because I have been. Is it bad to say I've been reveling in the fact?
Listen, I don't like to be that mean, but he wants to sue Friends. I mean, like, if he would have just like ignored it and let it go up, we would have talked about it. But like, I mean, he's been spreading such horrible lies, and now he's trying to actually hurt them personally. So it is what it is.
Yeah. So check that out. If you don't know who Billy Carson is, that's fine. You don't have to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff. Michael, always good stuff. Thanks again. Appreciate you. And we'll see you guys next time on FreeThinking Ministries. And as we always say here, stay reasonable.